And I'm also need to put that other video from last time out. All right, so this month is another easy block. So I'm going to concentrate instead of on how to sew, I'm going to concentrate on how to cut things out. And I always use my green mat for cutting out, unless I'm cutting something huge, and then I use the white mat that's underneath it. But the way I start out is I match up the line, the fold on my fabric to the bottom line. And you probably can't see it unless I zoom in.
So what if your fabric has like a design that you want to, do you still fold it, or do you do a straight edge then? Like well, a stripe is an example, but that's an extreme example. Sometimes there's just a fabric design that has a little bit of a line in it, you know.
If I want it to look straight, then I'll unfold it and I'll cut it that way. And I'll
That's a better way of putting it.
With the larger portion of the fabric laying at the top, and I'll pull it toward me as I cut it.
Okay.
That was a very good question. So when I'm using fabric, I always trim a tiny bit off of the edge. And as you can see, I don't have the one through whatever. It doesn't matter for me, as long as I have where I can see all of the lines. So I make sure that my fabric is a little bit beyond the end line. And since I'm going to be cutting not only the cream color, I'm going to make it easier on myself. I'm going to also cut my focal fabric at the same time. 4 different layers is not a big deal. I go up to 6. I have tried 8 with a bigger rotary cutter. It's not always successful because it shifts. So if you can keep it to 6 or less, it's better. And as you can see on this side, I have to make sure that all the way up goes through. So I'm going to lose a lot more on this blue piece than on the white piece, but you want a straight edge to start out with.
Would putting weights on your fabric, the more layers you have, help keep it together so it doesn't shift?
I've never tried that, but I have heard some of the ladies, they use actually the weights on their ruler to keep the ruler from moving. If you put weights on the fabric, it's kind of going to get in the way of the ruler, I think. Ladies, what do you say? Anybody?
I've never tried anything like that.
Me either.
I have.
So,
I usually just,
as I cut down my own, pressing on the ruler.
yeah, I kind of do the same thing. I just kind of crab my hand up the ruler as I'm cutting to keep the end from shifting when I. So I'll be pressing down, and then as I'm cutting, I'll just kind of inch my hand up.
also, you need to remember when you're cutting that you should be pushing down, not over.
Yeah.
You do have to keep it up against the rail, but it's more important to have the downward pressure than the over pressure. Okay, so one of the other things I do is when I'm lining up my ruler, sorry, I'm moving you guys around a lot.
Okay.
I use the next line up to make sure that this line is lined up. So I will take the that line on number 1 and match it up to my 35, which is right here, not only on this side, but also on the other side too. I always like to have a little extra hanging over on the other side. So if my 24 ruler doesn't work, then I use my 36-inch ruler. Oops, sorry. Well, you can't see it, but this is a 4 by 36. The other thing that's different, a lot of people like to use the rulers that have just a flat edge. I have a ruler that hangs over. It has a lip.
Oh.
I
And
used to
it's
have one of those. I loved it.
It's an Olaf. Olaf, is that the name of the way you say it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the mat is also an Olaf mat. I like to pair my rulers with my mats. So, but this is nice because then it won't move, you know, it will stay there. So matching up with the 35 on this side and on that side, I put my pinky finger on the opposite side like this to give it a little more stability. And I push down with my left hand. I take and put it up against the bottom of the rail, pushing down and continue on. Then when it gets past my hand, I then move my hand up like Christine was saying. And continue on. And I just inch my way up like Christine was saying, all the way to the end. And then it's important to pull when you're pulling your extra off, make sure you got a little bit of each one, because you cannot not always know underneath if you got it all unless you see some coming off. Then you know you've got a straight edge on that side. Now here's another little trick that I do. I'm cutting 4.5-inch width. Well, this is a 5-inch ruler. So before I move the ruler, I quickly look down at the 4.5-inch mark and note that it's 31.5. So now I know where to put my next line at 31.5. And then I line it up. So you don't have to always stop and count your marks. If you know that your ruler is shorter than what you're cutting, you can figure it out from the ruler where the next cut's going to be. So this pattern requires 3 light, 3 dark. So I'm going to cut my next one, lining up both sides.
And your tip about lining a different line up, a different line on the ruler up with the line on your mat, like a 1/2 inch over or something, that is a huge help because it's so hard to match the edge of your ruler up. It's much easier to get a different line.
Yeah, so you're looking at this, and 27 matches up with my 4.5 right there.
Yeah.
So I know that this has to go to the 27 mark. So bring it over to the 27, and I'm already got my 4.5. I know I've got it. And if you're not sure, then, oops, sorry, hit the thing. If you're not sure, then you just go back and you look at the last one and count 1, 2, 3, 4.5. The other thing that I want to stress, and we all know this, but you know, you always need to make sure you close your rotary cutter. I've heard of several people who have cut themselves with their rotary cutter, and this thing is so sharp. So again, finger up against, pressing down with the rotary cutter, move a little. Make sure that your lines are marked are together still at the top. My ruler moved a little bit. 22.5 is where my next cut is. And because I have this lip, I can hold it tight to where I've got it and then get my finger in my other hand set up. So if you're ever going to invest in some other rulers and mats, look at these because I really love them. All right, and I've got my 1, 2, 3 sets done. Okay. So I'm going to spin you guys around. Don't get dizzy or don't look at the thing. Once you get your 3 sets cut, you'll then have these to put together. So the other tip for this block is make sure you iron toward the dark. So see, I ironed the white to the dark, the white to the dark. And I did the same thing on this, the white to the dark. Reason being, when you cut these, they're going to lock in place with these. And let's see if I can show you that on the desk over here. So you can pretty much see it right here. When I have them face to face, see how they lock into each other? This one locks into that. And this one locks into that. So then after, when you cut these, and to those of you who took blocks from me, I should have cut them at 14. So I had a little bit of wiggle room, but I didn't think about it. And I think Carmen mentioned it at one point, and I said, that's a really good idea to take and have a little bit of wiggle room so that you don't have to cut exacto. So now I'm going to use my ruler to cut my 4.5 inches here. Now, since my all-off ruler was cut with the mat, then switching to the ruler itself should work just fine. So on the ruler,
Lynn?
Yeah.
Any tips on how to sew them together?
locking the joints.
Okay, what
Is-
about direction of the sewing? Do you sew them all in the same direction, or do you switch directions when you sew the strips together?
With such a small block, I don't think it makes a difference. If you were doing long strips, you should go one way and then come back the other way
Okay,
so that you don't get wonky results. Because when you're sewing, you're pushing the fabric. And then if you're always pushing the fabric this way, what's going to happen is your fabric's going to end up looking wonky in a crooked manner. You know, it might start up here Might start up here straight, but if it keeps pushing, it's going to be looking like this. So it's good to get in the habit of sew this way and then sew this way, so it doesn't go wonky. But for this one, I don't know that it would make a big a difference. The longer stuff you got to worry about. So I've got the 2 layers together and they're locked in spot. And I'm going to use my 4-inch measure right here and line it up with the edge. When I line up my edge, I don't want to see any fabric beyond it. Again, pinky finger down and cut. Here's a trick. Put your ruler on what you haven't cut and remove what you did cut. Reason being, if there's any little hang-ups here from your rotary cutter, you're not moving this portion and it'll stay in place for you and you can just trim the little places. So again, lining up my 4.5 inch. Pressing down. So now I have, and if you look at this, you can see I've got 4.5 left. Now we just mix these. We have two block sets. And when you're putting them together, they interlock with each other. And make sure you slide them good, and I pin. I don't like to do without pinning, especially when I'm trying to match corners. So I'm not going to show you how I sew them because I think we went over sewing last week. I do want to show you that I got a new tool. And I don't care for this brand. Paula Kavorik, is that her last name?
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to fall. She had a brand name one of these that had the holes in it. And I ordered this one because it had a scant 1/4 inch versus the other one. And these holes are way too big.
I can't see what you've got.
Can you see now?
No, you're kind of frozen.
Okay. Am I frozen to everybody?
No, it's
No,
Oh, just me. Oh, now you're not frozen anymore.
Okay. So this ruler that I got is supposed to be so you can take and go to your machine
tilt it up a little bit.
Perfect.
so you can go to your machine and it comes with a magnet like this. And you take and find the 1/4 inch hole, which is right there. And you put your needle in that 1/4 inch hole. And before I do that, matter of fact, this might even help you guys to see better. So you put your needle in the 1/4 inch hole. Well, this hole is so big that it can move it around. So that's why I say the name brand one is probably much better. And then you take this magnet and you put it up against the ruler, and when the fabric's not there, it should be in a spot then you can sew and know you're doing a 1/4 inch. You know, we used the tape last time. And to be honest, I think the tape's a better way to go.
Can you not just use the markings on your machine on the plate?
You can, but what you also need to know is where on the marking you're supposed to use. So if you look at the markings on my plate, I've got a little line right here. And do I put it in the center? Do I cover the whole marking? Do I cover the edge and be able to see the marking? So a tool like this helps you to know where you're supposed to be looking. And once you do figure that out, then that's great. And not everybody's has the markings like mine do. I have 3 different places where it tells me that it's a 1/4 inch. You could always use a ruler and mark a black line down here. I love this little line at the edge of my machine. And I know the older ones do not have it because my older Janome does not have that. It has this one and this one, but it doesn't have that. So it helps you to see what you're doing. And I found on mine, the marking, you have to see a little tiny bit of that marking in order to get a true 1/4 inch. So, but older machines, these might work better, but I'm just giving you guys some different looks at different things. All right, have I gone over enough to be able to do the block, or do I need to do more?
It was very helpful. I've never lined it up with my mat. I think that's very helpful.
Good. I want to show you last month's quilt. So there it is put together.
Nice.
Thank you for all your all's hard work. And we also have several more blocks, so there'll be another one, but this was the fabric that I sent out in the bags. So, and okay, so the other thing I didn't put on the instructions was how to iron the seams over so that they interlock. So just remember that part because I don't have that in the instructions.
I signed
And-
on late. Could you go over that again? I assume we're pressing toward the dark fabric.
Yes, for this one specifically, we are pressing toward the dark. And that the reason we're doing it that way is so that they will interlock at the end. Since the blocks have opposite, then when we put them together, you're going to have nice interlocking seams and get nice crisp corners. Okay.
For the one from last month, I didn't do that, and I am going to do one. Which way do you want the seams pressed?
Toward the outside.
Towards the outside. Okay, thank you.
Here's an example. It makes it just easier to go, and remember to line up your corner as you're folding it so that it lines up with a center point on your blocks. That way you'll get this nice square.
Do you have the video from last month?
I actually do, and I will try and get both of this video and that video out for you guys to be able to look at. So I'm going to stop our recording.